Welcome back, everybody, to Catapult Your Business, where we help answer one question every week and help you scale your organization to the next level. So glad you've joined us. We've got a killer topic today. We're going to dig into how do you go about scaling a sales process. Everybody thinks they've got a sales process. Question is, do you actually? So stick around to figure out what we're referencing here, but it can make or break a company being able to scale. More importantly, continue to remove some of that owner dependency if that's still the stage of the business that you're in. So to help me talk through this, I've got a special guest with me. His name is Dan. Dan, welcome to the call.
Hi, Casey. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Well, we're glad you're here, Dan. For those that don't know, Dan is a super talented advisor with us, has helped a ton of companies continue to grow and scale their firm. Absolutely is helping us deliver our mission and vision here at Cultivate. So we're glad to have you on the team, Dan. Do you mind sharing everybody just a little bit about your background, just kind of a quick summary here?
Yeah, absolutely, Casey. Again, thank you so much for having me. Very long story short, rose through the ranks in corporate America in the logistics world, and eventually became head of commercial sales for a Fortune 1000 company. So led a sales division of well over 100 sales reps, over 100 support staff as well, and into the hundreds of $millions of revenue for that company. Then actually transitioned to entrepreneurship, ran my own business, and successfully scaled that, exited that. And now I'm here as an advisor here at Cultivate, and super excited to work with business owners, helping them scale their business now.
I love it. Well, you know something about entrepreneurship, obviously from that experience, but what better person than to talk sales process than somebody that has your experience on the back end for sales. So thanks for taking a break from the advising the day-to-day to be with us here on this episode. I'm gonna jump right into it. Like, just I want to know your perspective. Like, why do you think this is so important that the sales process is scalable? Like, I just love to hear your perspective of how you even look at sales processes and why owners should care about this.
Well, I'm very passionate about this, so I will try and keep my enthusiasm tampered down a little bit here. But a sales process is absolutely critical, whether you're a Fortune 1000 company or a business owner that's, say less than $1 million. It is absolutely critical that you have a sales process and that you are constantly looking at that sales process and how do you scale it. It's absolutely imperative that you do that. And so my vantage point of it is it has to be in place. And if you don't have one in place, or if you don't have one that is going to successfully scale with your business will never scale. They go in tandem. It's absolutely critical that they're both firing on all cylinders when it comes to that.
It's a revenue engine, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if you can't control and predict the conversion rate of all the leads that you generate, no matter if it's a B2B business or a consumer-based business, product, service, doesn't matter, right? Like, at the end of the day, if you don't have a way to measure and understand what's happening in your sales process so you can predict revenue, how are you going to grow it? How are you going to get the business to grow, right? So, and I don't know if you've ever seen this, Dan. I find so many times I'll sit down with an owner and they'll be like, "Oh, do you have a sales process?" "Oh yeah, I've got one." But then I look under the hood and I go, this isn't a sales process. Have you ever come across that or ever had that experience in your world?
Constantly. And one thing that I always say, and I love your analogy there, one of the things that I always equate it to is, okay, say you're lost in the woods and you don't know where the food is in those woods. It's just like, okay, that might be a sales process, as in, oh, I'm going to wander around and every once in a while find a few berries to eat. But if you don't have the sales process or actually have that roadmap, if you will, to where the food is or where water is, you will not sustain. And so to answer your question, absolutely. I mean, one of my biggest examples of that is when I was with the Fortune 1000 company as head of sales. When I took over, this division had been in place for over 30 years. They thought they had a sales process, but they truly did not have a sales process in place. So when I came in and took over that division, we identified it, we defined it, we actually created a sales process, even at that scale, and we were able to 3x the division's gross revenue at that point. So even at that point, they thought they had a sales process, but they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, the things that I usually see, and I'd love to hear your perspective, where I think people get this missed, because I think if you're listening in, you're going, hey, I want to scale my sales process. Like, you actually need to first ask yourself, do I have one, right? And it's like you might have steps you like to take, but it doesn't mean you actually have a sales process, right? And so for me, like, I really view this as like, oftentimes it's like, oh yeah, we're going to do this meeting, then this meeting. Like, that doesn't mean you have a sales process, right? Like, you haven't identified the goals. You haven't identified exactly what the next step is of each process, what you're in pursuit of. You haven't identified the documentation of how you're going to train this to others. You haven't figured out step by step that are triggers and trackers in each and every step. So you have the ability to create consistency within that sales process, right? And it's a process that you follow, but no one else follows. You don't have a sales process. So I don't know. That's my perspective. I mean, how would you define a process? Like, how would you define a sales process? Just curious if you have any systems or widgets you've used with your clients.
Yeah, I mean, really, one of the things that I always look at when it comes to a sales process is you have to look at the entirety, where it's just like, okay, where are we going? You know, we here at Cultivate use the roadmap analogy all the time, and it's the
Yep.
same thing when it comes to a sales process. It's a sales process roadmap. Where first and foremost, where are we going? What are the sales that we need to generate over the next year,
Right.
quarter, month, etc.? So
How
you
many
have
leads do
to.
we have? What's the conversion rate, right? You gotta do the math to even know, what type of level of sales process you need, right?
Absolutely. So where are we going? What's the numbers that we need to actually hit? So that's where you have to start, where it's just like, where are we going with this? Then we
Yeah.
have to reverse engineer it. How many leads do we need to generate? What's the like you described? What's the conversion numbers? How many, what channels are these coming through from sales, marketing, whatever the case may be? We have to identify all of that. And so many times business owners will, like you said, they think they have a sales process. They may say, oh, I have an initial call, and I have a discovery call, or I have a proposal review call. And
Right.
so many people get hung up on, it's this call and then this meeting, and then we're trying to close it.
Right.
It's so much more that goes into it than just, here are the 3 meetings that we
Here are
have.
the three
There's so
steps
much
I'm
more to
missing.
it.
Yeah. No, totally. Well, and I love that you're even talking about, like, you got to know if especially in terms of scale, right? Like, your team needs to know these are the lead tactics that are coming in. Here's how we're going to speak, or our narrative, or the way we're going to approach each of those lead types of different tactics, because based on what tactic they come from is usually different levels of warmth and cold, in which you have to apply your sales process differently based on each lead. Then, in addition, right, as you're funneling down, as you shared, right, what are the steps that have to be had inside of each step of those meetings that they shared, right? And it's the details, the devil in the details, that most people miss, has been my experience.
You're 100% correct. I mean, I look at like one of the very first steps that I look at, and I was usually equated to like a 12-step process, so to speak, where, like
Yeah.
step number one is, you need to identify your customers. Think about your ideal client personas. So many different people, whether it's a service-based business or a product-based business, whatever that situation is. So many times they haven't even taken that step where who are we even going after? What's our client, very
Well, we
situation.
work we work
We're
with
good.
businesses. It's like, no, no, no. What industries are the businesses? No, no, no. What revenue do you work with? Well, we work within a range. No, no, no. What's your sweet spot? We only want to go after businesses between 5 million and 10 million in size, and this industry, that live in this region, right? Like, they don't understand that you would build a sales process differently for that ICP than a one that was a 10 to 20 million dollar revenue business, because the way that those companies make decisions is different. People just don't think like that.
They don't think about it.
No, they
And
don't.
it's, another analogy that I think of often is that they're fishing in the wrong pond. If they haven't
Right.
identified that right ICP,
Right.
you're fishing over in this pond where it's just like, okay, you're wanting to go out and catch a marlin, where you need to be off the coast of Cabo, and you're in a pond, fishing for minnows at that point, where it's just like,
Right.
oh yeah, we're going to
You
land a
wonder why
million
the
dollar client.
conversion.
There is no
Yeah.
$1 million clients over here.
Well, so I think that's great. I mean, if you're going to build a sales process, make sure you've built the process in pursuit of the pond that you plan to fish in, and make sure that you're clear of why you want to fish in that pond. So that's step one. I'm assuming you got another step for me.
Yeah, step number two is then you need to, once you've identified the pond, who you're going after, the ICP. You need to clearly define those stages. So that is, kind of getting into
That's what a lot of people do, right? But they don't go to the level of detail. We'll get to that. But generally people do like to say, I'm going to do these meetings. Any advice that you would give of like what to think about when laying out those stages?
Yeah, absolutely. Where it goes back to the ICP as well, where it's just like, okay, how long of a sales process does it typically take? Start there, identify
This
that.
industry, this
Where
type of
has it,
product,
has it been a 6 month process? Is it a 1 week process? And
right?
so that's another way that you dissect it and really go through that process. So if it's a 6 month process where, and say it's an enterprise level client that you're having to go after, how do we get other fellow stakeholders in that organization on board versus say a B2C customer where it's just you're just trying to close one individual on that
Or the
side.
transaction of e-commerce. There's still a sales process involved with that, right? One of
Right.
the things that I still use is kind of HubSpot's methodology, right? Of just like awareness, consideration, decision making, right? It's like the sales process, generally your stages are like, what's your step that's going to help solve awareness? You might need multiple depending on the complexity or the size or the number of stakeholders involved. Then when are you going to walk through the considerational aspects where they're starting to actually consider working with you? And then you get to the decision. I think too many times when people build sales process, my experience with owners is that they just jump straight to the decision-making stages. It's like, great, let me tell you what we do. Let me present what we do. Are you ready? And it's like, you don't understand. You want to build the stages of this. You're laughing because you see this all the time. I know you do.
Yeah.
The stages that we generally want to go after is what's the one or two stages that's around the awareness, meaning we're just trying to help them understand why this even matters and why they should even explore it. We're not actually even providing our solution yet. Then we're trying to go to consideration. Hey, have you considered doing this or this for your business or for your life, or for, have you considered what this will do for you? That's education. Then the decision is, let me tell you why we're the best people. And people, when they build sales process, they usually flip that.
Mm.
It's been my experience. So that's just, if you're listening in and you've done that and you're having a problem with conversion, you might have the stages a little backwards of actually what matters of the buyer's mindset as they go through it. So
are you getting the advice you need for your business from this episode? Do you want to get more than just one question answered and have it customized to you and your business? Well, Cultivate Advisors works one-on-one with thousands of business owners every day. Let them help you scale your business today. Don't just listen to this episode. Take action and go to cultivateadvisors.com to see which advisor you get matched with and receive a free 2-hour business assessment on how you could scale your business to the next level. Act now at cultivateadvisors.com.
all right, I'm dying here. What's number 3?
Yeah.
ICP,
So really,
next.
yeah. So, and number 3 that I always look at is when you identify those stages, you need to, set your clear objectives for each one of those stages. So so, hey, we have an initial call or discovery call, whatever vernacular you want to apply to that particular stage. What objective are we wanting to accomplish in each one of those stages? So many different people, they don't think that through, where it's just like, what are we wanting to accomplish in this meeting or this stage? And so it's always, oh, we got to get the sell, we got to get the sell, we got to get the sell. No, you need to actually break it down into in those individual steps. How are we winning? To use a football analogy, how are we getting that first down? So if it's an initial call, how are we getting that first down to move the ball down the field, to continually move that ball down to eventually get the touchdown, but you're not going to get it all at once. If you do, great, congratulations. But typically speaking, that's not how it's going to happen.
Well, it's selling the next step, right? And it's I love that it's milestones that you need to achieve, on each stage of the process. And I think for folks that, especially if they have a scaling sales team or they have folks that, they've already started to scale this process, I think you'll learn very quickly, right? If you're only celebrating closed deals, but you're not celebrating that the stage was fully completed, you're probably leaving a ton of business out there that you could have captured and more revenue you could have brought in, because that means your conversion rates are probably way lower than they should be, because they probably are only focused on trying to get the sale, and that turns a lot of people away. That doesn't create the right opportunity, right? And I just want to hear, because you've given some really good service provider examples. Even if you're a car mechanic, right, and you're getting on a quick, and the process is, the stage is a 5-minute call, right, to go, Hey, what are you dealing with? Or they show up to the car. Hey, what's the problem? Even having clarity of like, my actual objective in this 5-minute call is to let them know that we have, a full assessment that we can do. I know you want me to look at this, but I want to be able to ask, are you open to me also looking at the full assessment of the vehicle? And that could be the goal. We just want to make sure we ask that question to every single person in the first 5-minute introductory of when they pull into the shop. So even if you're brick or mortar, I just want to make sure if you're listening in, no matter what type of business you have to slow this down and think very critically, truly about what each stage is and what that objective is. All right, now you got me hooked. What's number 4?
Number 4, identify the key activities. So for each one of those stages, who is actually going to be doing this activity? If you have a sales team, if you're the business owner who's doing it, you have to identify within those stages, and as you're moving that ball down the field, what are those key activities that are happening? So again, I'm going to be on my football analogy here. It's football season right now. So, who is, what are the positions that are in play? Do you have an offensive line? Do you have a quarterback? So if you have a bit of a larger sales team with several individuals, who all is involved in that? Do you have some support staff? So you have to identify those activities for each members of that team that are actually playing with that. And for all you business owners that are on your own, you don't have a sales team as of yet. And one thing I just want to take a quick pause. And even if you're in this situation, you have to do this and document this, not just now, but for when you do have a sales team and you do have people taking this on. So I did want to take a brief pause on that. So as you identify those activities, what does that mean? What is happening? Who's making the phone call? Who's making the email? Who's sending the proposals out? You have to identify that, because so many times people overlook it, and it's those little things that start to slip through the cracks, and that's how your conversion numbers go down, because you're not looking at the small details of how things are getting accomplished.
Thanks for tuning in to Catapult Your Business, where Cultivate Advisors is helping you catapult your business one question at a time. Are you running your business, or is your business running you? At Cultivate Advisors, they'll match you with an expert advisor and do a free 2-hour deep dive for your business. This will give you the clarity you need on how to get your business to the next level. Cultivate has worked with thousands of businesses. What do you have to lose? So head over to cultivateadvisors.com and sign up for your free 2-hour session.
Yeah, well, there should be a step to each stage, right? Like, so each stage, and then there should be a 3 or 4 step process within each stage, right? Just think of it like a workflow. Like when you're working through it, it's like, okay, the best analogy I've actually ever heard, I don't know if you've ever heard this before in our world, Dan, but we used to teach sales a lot as you have a exit room. I don't know if people have done exit rooms before, but you're trying to, get out of the rooms and, find the clues and all that. What you want to do is think about in each meeting or each, whatever step or stage you have, depending on the business, you have an objective that has to happen to go to the next step inside of that meeting. And just the same thing is like, I can't get out of the exit place that I'm trying to get out of, right? It's a game. I'm not allowed to go to the next step until I've achieved that objective, right? And it's just like a simple way. It's like, because you can't, it's pointless. If you go to the next room, you won't be able to reference back the clue you had to get to that next room anyway. So you're going to be stuck, and you'll have to go backwards anyway. So if you cheat, right, it doesn't help. So that's just a good analogy to kind of tie into what you're doing. I don't know how many steps you've got, but what's number 5?
Number 5 is you got to make sure you got the right tools and technology in place. So, whether you're starting out, whether it's on Google Sheets all the way up to a sophisticated CRM, you got to make sure that you're implementing tools and technology to make that sales process scalable. So that's a very important one that people overlook, of a good technology, whatever that platform may be.
It always blows my mind, right? While when sometimes owners or business leaders won't invest in the technology to create the guardrails. So just again, if you want to scale, right, and you want to create this sales process to grow, humans are most likely doing a lot of your sales. And in the event if that's the case, why would you not guardrail it, right? You can build the roads and the systems for everybody to follow. But if you're not going to bring in technology that helps create triggers, who helps create reminders, who helps make sure you're doing the follow-up versus you having to do that, gosh, you're going to spend way more money on your time doing that than just letting a good CRM or a good additional tech stack to help support proposals, or all the different fun things that are out there now to help support your sales process. So super, super critical that's in place. That's a good 5 steps. I mean, Dan, anything else top of mind you go, if you really want to get the sales process totally dialed in, what would you share?
My last one that I'll share here is you have to develop and document your SOPs, your standard operating procedures for this. So once you've gone through, you've built it out, you need to document it. So just like I mentioned before, for those business owners that are doing it on their own, or say maybe you just have one sales rep on the team right now, you have to put that in place and document those procedures so that you can transfer that knowledge and that skill set to whomever is going to take it on next. And that's when you start to get that repeatability and that scalability when it comes to, you can pass this off and you can hire a team to come on and actually do it, and you're no longer dependent on the owner to do it.
And I would even say that's great advice, even for folks that already have scaled a sales team and they're sitting around wondering why they can't sell as well as you did as the owner. I see that a lot of times too. I see a lot of times too that owners have gotten even some success with sales team, but it's polarized. Like some are really doing well, some are not. That's probably your symptom and your red flag. They're just showing like, this probably actually isn't documented to the level that it could be, and has made it more turnkey that you can keep repeating this over and over and over again. Because again, everybody's probably came in today going, I've got the stages. But most people just don't understand the level of detail you have to take the stage and the guardrail to actually be able to create the predictability that you probably are so much desiring for, to be able to control your revenue. And this is what causes this. This is what creates this. And so again, we're talking a little bit in generalities today, right? And I think, Dan, the biggest piece of advice that I heard today that I would just slow down for everybody to hear is, don't assume you have a strong sales process. Best way to actually figure this out, either train somebody new and see how well they perform. They should perform very well out of the gates because of the sales process. Or hire somebody, I don't care if it's us or somebody else, but have a third party who looks at sales processes all day and be able to tell you nowhere near what's actually in the market, or the level of detail you need, and the amount of data and the amount of the planning, because you just don't know what you don't know. So that'd be my biggest piece of advice. Dan, love to come to you. Is there any other kind of final words of wisdoms you'd like to share with, all of our listeners as they're thinking about sales and reflecting on where they're at in their own sales process?
I love those 2 points that you had, where it's just like, get an outside opinion, and also also, even if, one other thing that I would add to that as well is, if you do have somebody that is, coming in from the outside and looking at it, see if it has somebody to do it within the same industry, whether it be, same industry, B2B, somebody who has a little bit more knowledge to that. Because some of the things that happen with business owners is they'll find some sort of sales process and it's not even applicable to their industry. And so it's just the wrong fit at that time. So that's the other side of it. But ultimately, my parting thought is, look at it, evaluate it. It never hurts to look at it. You don't know what you don't know, like you just said. So you have to evaluate it, because chances are you can improve it no matter what stage you're at. You can constantly improve it.
I mean, you're just saying that you've got to always be optimizing, right? You've got to have set times in the calendar to review with your team. Where are the conversion rates on every step? And when you start to see something go a little haywire for an individual or for the company as a whole, you've got to go in and also be open to updating and altering it. The reality is the trends and sales and the trends, what's happening in your product or service, is changing constantly. And so if you're not on the forefront of that, well said, like you're going to fall behind. You're going to start to see a declining, diminishing returns of conversion rates, and that'll ultimately impact your revenue, which ultimately impacts your ability to scale, which ultimately impacts your livelihood as entrepreneurs, because as we know, it all eventually falls on our shoulders.
And also, one other thing that I'll add to that is that, even if you put something in place, say 5 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe you were at $500,000 in revenue at that time, and now you're at 5 million. Is that same sales process applicable to a $5 million business than a $500,000 business? So you may not even be the exact same business that you were 5 years or 10 years ago. So
classic.
Look at it, process, optimize, continue to look at it. Don't become complacent and not look at, and not open up the hood and look at it, continually improve and be flexible as you grow the business.
I love it, Dan. Well, the knowledge, I think, loud and clear, you gave us a nice 6-step process. I want to just like summarize it again really, really fast. So step 1, high level, just a couple words.
Yep. Step 1, identify your client persona.
Step 2.
Define your clear stages.
Step 3.
Set clear objectives for each stage.
Step 4.
Identify your key activities
Within each step.
within each stage. Yep.
And then step 5.
Your tools and technology that you'll utilize.
Okay. And then the last point.
Document your standard operating procedures.
I love it. If you go in that order, bake a cake, create this sales process, bake it up, and I'm sure you will continue to be on your way as you scale your sales process. So Dan, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate you being on. For everybody listening in, continue to go through the ups and downs of this entrepreneurial journey. I know it can sometimes be full of frustration or even times of burnout, but at the end of the day, there is absolutely a reward on the other side. And if you're really stressed out about the business, just remember there's probably a different way to be running this business. You don't have to run the business. You don't have to let the business run you. You also can be the one that gets to run the business. So take back control if that's in your situation. And I hope to see you again in our next episode as we break down one more question to catapult your business to the next level. But until then, we'll see you next week.